Dungeons & Dragons is a game. Now, I know if you've clicked on this video, you know that, but it can be much more than that. It can be an epic tale of heroes being forced to face greater and greater odds as the world hangs on the balance. It can also be a comedic, coming-of-age tale of a group of weirdos trying to find their place in the world. TTRPGs are a different medium of storytelling than most out there. It's most similar to improv due to the fact that the story is being built on the fly, but there is a script that's being held by the Dungeon Master, who knows what they want the actors or players to do. But generally, the DM won't tell them. In fact, many of the DMs specifically want their players to do things that go against what they've prepared in their script. As well, excluding the many actual play podcasts, RPGs hold a weird place in the storytelling medium because the actors are also the audience, who are also the ones telling the story. A good story can take a D&D game a long way, and knowing how to create an engaging story can turn a regular D&D game into a legendary one. I want to make things clear. When I'm referring to storytelling, I'm not just referring to the notes as prepared by the Dungeon Master. Both the DM and the players have a part in telling the story. The players are in fact the main characters, whose responsibility is to make choices that push the story forward. Giving your party the opportunity to make interesting, impactful choices is good storytelling. Your players should feel like they have a unique impact on the world and are in control of what happens. One of the easiest ways to show this is to block off previously available events after an action has been taken place. An obvious example of this is if there was a settlement that was raided or destroyed, all of the benefits that they would have gotten from that settlement, whether that be shopkeepers or allies, are now gone since that settlement no longer exists. But it could also be more simple than that. Let's say the party rob a store of their diamonds, and that store has to shut down because they can't afford to pay the rent. And now that city no longer has a diamond supplier, so the party are, for now, limited on their casts of Revivify. But if you want this to happen, you actually have to set up the choices, not just for your players, but for yourself as well. If you make choices that are too restrictive, you risk the chance of the party finding a way to go outside of those restrictions. And then you either have to improv entirely what's happening, or you have to deny the party of their creative idea that they had. But if you make too many choices and try to prepare all of the consequences, well, you're spending a lot of time preparing a lot of things that you know for certain the party aren't going to interact with. If it takes you 10 minutes to prepare an ending to a quest, and you make 7 endings, and of course the party only see 1, well, that's an hour of your life that you wasted that you could have done doing more actual prep that the players would see. So what I do is I pace my sessions around the knowledge that at the end, there's going to be a decision that the party have to make. But instead of preparing the choices, I prepare the outcomes, or more specifically, the immediate outcomes of their choices. So if a villain has kidnapped 2 NPCs, I might prepare, okay, if one of them lives and one of them dies, the party return back to the village, get 15 gold pieces, and a funeral is held for whichever died. If both of them live, the party return to the village or is rewarded with 30 gold pieces, and there's a celebration held in the party's honor. If the party return and both NPCs have died, then the party get no gold, and there is a funeral for both characters. Now maybe both of these NPCs are actually really important to the world, but I don't need to worry about that because I have planned it around the end of the session, and so all of the bigger world consequences that I might have to deal with, I can push onto when I'm preparing for the next session. As well, I don't have to worry about the party doing something that I hadn't prepared because I hadn't prepared it yet. Now, at the same time, as important choices are, as important freedom is, you have to railroad sometimes. Railroading is an incredibly useful tool that you should not ignore. I know that railroading has the negative connotations to it, but that's when it's used poorly. That's when it's used too much. The way to railroad correctly is to not be lazy about it, but to really know your players, know what their character motivations are, and give them plenty of reasons to follow the track that you've laid for them. You can push them down the rail once they're on the train, but you actually have to persuade them to get on the train first. Here's a personal example. For my Strixhaven game, my party are having a tournament arc where they're teaming up and facing up against other teams. Kind of like Goblet of Fire style, but they are all working together against other competitors. I mean, I wasn't even subtle about the fact that it's Goblet of Fire. I literally called it the Tri-Mage Championship. It's the same thing. Now, when I told them about it, I made sure to mention a couple things. First, it only happens every 3 years, so considering that this was in their second year, they would not have an opportunity to do this again. Secondly, whoever wins gets a special mark on their diploma showing that they won this championship. And thirdly, the team who lives gets the opportunity to live in the penthouse dorm that's in the central campus of the school for the rest of the time that they'll be at Strixhaven. So I started by giving them a little bit of FOMO, or a fear of missing out. They wouldn't have the opportunity to go and do this again later if they changed their minds. If they want to do it, they have to do it now. Then I showed them the benefits of what they would get if they chose to follow along, academic credentials being one of them. For some characters, that's going to be more important than others, so I also offered them a nice, luxurious room to stay in. Without knowing my game, that might not seem important, but they had just started their second year, and had just had to start dealing with the fact that everyone lives in way different parts of the school, and it's hard to get everyone to meet up if there's an immediate problem that they have to deal with. Essentially, the idea is you're making a deal so sweet they can't say no. Giving the characters multiple reasons to accept the quest means you're not going to have that cognitive dissonance that sometimes appears in games where I know my character wouldn't go on this quest, but I feel like I have to because this is the game. With multiple reasons, that means there's probably something that character can latch onto in regards to motivation. Now, if I'm writing for an entire campaign or an adventure arc, or just for a couple of sessions, what I like to do is what I call ignore the middle. It's exactly what it sounds like. You prepare everything that you think you need to know that happens before the adventure, you prepare the first session or two, and you prepare what you think everything is leading towards. And then, once I have my intro and my conclusion, I ignore the middle. As I get to the middle, I make it up as I go along. But really what's happening is the middle is getting pushed farther in, and there's more beginning now, because everything that was the beginning is now the past. Then I make up the middle as I go along, knowing that my goal is to get my players to the conclusion that I've prepared. So if the party make a choice or fail to do something, that means that the ending has to change. Well, that's fine, because the ending is so far away that I can make changes to it as we get closer to it. And I'm not losing any work that I've done in the middle, because I haven't done it yet. I feel like this is a bit hard to explain, so I'll give an example, and I mean, you've already heard it in this video, so you know exactly what I'm gonna say next. In my Strixhaven game, we had a bit of a doppelganger story session. There were doppelgangers going around the school pretending to be the party and purposely ruining their reputation. Going into the session, I knew all that information, plus I knew that I wanted the end of the session to be a fight with these doppelgangers out in the swamp in the far end of the school. I had no idea how the party would figure out that there's doppelgangers, when they would figure out, or how we would get to that confrontation. I just knew that after the session starts and they start making choices, I need to lead them in a way that gets to that event at the end. The information I had in the beginning and the end was enough to improvise the middle, so I could run with whatever ideas my party had on where they wanted to go and make that work from there. So during the session, I was showing them multiple examples of different students treating them badly for seemingly no apparent reason. And for a bit, they weren't seeing this as something they could investigate until I happened to mention one of the NPCs telling them off for something they did at a party that they never went to. This was just meant to be a clue that people at the school believed that the party were doing stuff that they're pretty certain they never did, but my party really went with this. They concluded that they needed to actually go to a party and to see what was going on there that could make people believe that they were doing stuff they weren't doing. And what that led to might be my favorite moment of D&D that I've ever had the chance to run. 2 of the party planned to show up early and watch the crowd, and the other 2 party members planned to show up later. So I'm describing to the first half of my party what they're seeing when I describe the second half of the party showing up. And instead of giving them an opportunity to say what they're doing, I described them walking into the party. For about 3 seconds, those 2 PCs were very unhappy with me, yelling at me that they did not say they wanted to go in the party yet, and they wanted to catch up with the other 2 party members. And that's when I describe those 2 party members showing back up again, the first 2 party members looking at them with a deja vu look on their face, and then asking them what to do. The look on their faces when it all clicked, when they realized what was going on and realized that the people who just went into the party look exactly like them and are not them, I would never, like I cannot put in the words. I still get giddy just thinking about it. It was so much fun. Which leads to the final thing that I want to talk about, which is payoff. The best storytelling is setting up expectations and paying them off in a satisfying way. Even a plot twist done effectively is just playing off of the audience's expectations and subverting them in a satisfying way. Chekhov's gun is a great literary example of payoff. If you set up a gun in the first act, you know it's going to be fired by the third act. And these literary tropes, whatever your favorites are, can be brought into D&D. So what does this include? Obviously includes bringing back characters from a player's backstory, or having reoccurring characters show up over and over, but it can also include something like making a seemingly unimportant magic item actually very important to a powerful being. And whether they actually want it back or not isn't necessarily important to them. What they really want is revenge on the people who took it. Thank you for watching. Now, I normally ask you to subscribe at this point, which would be nice. I'm really trying to hit 500 subs before the end of the year. But really, I want to hear from you what you do to create engaging stories in D&D. An engaging story has many definitions. What I find enjoyable might not be what you find enjoyable, and what you find enjoyable, I might find enjoyable, but I just haven't thought of it yet. Thank you again, and this is the end of the video.